To our amazing viewers at Cheating Tales Lab, we'd love to hear, which part of the world are you joining us from? Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Ghosts and Goodbyes. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and death. Lieutenant Commander Dustin Hardin stood at his mother Beverly's bedside, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow, labored breaths. The machines beeped rhythmically, counting down the final moments of a life that had been both his anchor and his agony. "Dustin," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her hand, paper-thin and cold, reached for his. He took it gently, the way he'd learned to handle fragile things during his 12 years in the Navy, with respect and careful precision. "I'm here, Mom." "Victor, he's not what you think. I should have told you." She coughed, her body convulsing. "The papers, in the attic, blue box." "Mom, don't try to talk. Save your strength." "No time." Her eyes, once vibrant brown, now dulled by cancer, locked onto his. "He married me for. I was stupid. Thought he loved me. But the house, the money your father left. I kept it separate. It's yours. All of it. Don't let him." The machine screamed. Nurses rushed in. Dustin was pushed aside as they worked frantically, but he knew. He'd seen death before, in the waters off the Horn of Africa, in the faces of men he couldn't save. This was different. This was his mother. Beverly Schmidt Hardin Robles died at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in March. Victor Robles didn't arrive until midnight. He burst through the door with theatrical grief, his salt and pepper hair disheveled, his expensive cologne preceding him like a warning. At 58, he maintained the physique of a man who spent more time at the gym than at his consulting firm, a business Dustin had never quite understood. "Beverly, my love." Victor's performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with trembling hands and tears that appeared on cue. Dustin stood in the corner, his 6-foot frame rigid, arms crossed. He wore his dress blues. He'd been called from the base where he was overseeing training exercises. The uniform felt heavy with the weight of what he'd witnessed over the past 3 hours. "She's gone," Dustin said flatly. Victor's grief evaporated for a fraction of a second, his eyes darting to Dustin with something that looked like calculation before the mask slipped back into place. "My poor Beverly. We had so little time together. 7 years. They'd been married 7 years. 7 years of Victor's condescending smirks, his barely veiled contempt for Dustin's military career, his slow erosion of Beverly's independence. Dustin's wife, Katrina, appeared at his side. She was 32, 5 years younger than Dustin, with intelligent green eyes and auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. They'd met 4 years ago when she was working as a trauma counselor at the VA hospital. She understood what he'd been through in ways most civilians couldn't. "Dustin, we should go," she said softly, her hand on his arm. "Yes, run along, Dustin," Victor said, his voice dripping with false concern. "This must be so hard for you, playing dress-up in your little uniform while your mother was dying." Katrina's grip tightened on Dustin's arm. She knew the signs, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his hands slowly unclenched. He was a man trained in combat, in strategic thinking, in patience. Victor had no idea how dangerous it was to provoke him. "We'll talk at the funeral," Dustin said, his voice controlled. "About Mom's wishes." "Oh, we'll definitely talk about your mother's wishes," Victor replied, and something in his tone made Dustin pause at the door. 3 days later, the funeral was a small affair at Riverside Cemetery. Beverly hadn't wanted fanfare. The mourners included Dustin and Katrina, a handful of Beverly's friends from her book club, and Victor, who stood apart with a woman Dustin didn't recognize, brunette, mid-40s, wearing too much jewelry for a funeral. "Who's that with Victor?" Katrina whispered. "No idea. Probably some business associate." The woman's name was Graciela Doty, and she watched Dustin with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Her eyes kept flicking between him and Victor, as if measuring something. After the service, as mourners offered condolences, Victor approached with his lawyer, a thin man named Russell Berry who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. "Dustin, we need to discuss the estate," Victor said. "Not here. Not now. I'm afraid it can't wait. Your mother had debts. The house, her medical bills, they've left the estate in a precarious position. As her husband, I have certain legal rights." Dustin's best friend and former Navy brother, Clay Erickson, materialized beside him. Clay was a mountain of a man, 6'4", with the build of someone who could bench press a car. He'd served with Dustin in the Gulf, had been there the night Dustin earned his Navy Cross. Everything okay here? Clay's voice was deceptively calm. Victor stepped back. Just discussing family business. Then you won't mind doing it at a more appropriate time, Clay suggested, and it wasn't really a suggestion. Victor's eyes narrowed. Fine. My lawyer will be in touch. But Dustin, you should know, I'm not leaving empty-handed. Your mother and I built a life together. I deserve compensation for my contributions. After Victor left, Clay turned to Dustin. That guy's a piece of work. He's been like that since Mom married him. Constant jabs about the Navy being for weaklings and boys who can't make it in the real world. Dustin watched Victor's Mercedes pull away. He called my uniform, playing dress-up, the last time we had dinner together. That was 6 months ago. Mom invited us. He spent the whole meal mocking my service. What did you do? Katrina asked. I sat silent. Took it. Because Mom loved him, God knows why, and I didn't want to upset her. Dustin's voice was hollow. I regret that now. I should have said something. He's afraid of you, Clay observed. That's why he attacks. Men like that, they can smell real strength, and it terrifies them. Chapter 2. The Reading. A week later, they gathered in the office of Beverly's estate lawyer, Annette Garcia. She was a sharp woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a reputation for fierce advocacy. Her office was lined with law books and family photos. She had 3 kids, Dustin knew, and a husband who taught high school. Thank you all for coming, Annette said, adjusting her reading glasses. Beverly Schmidt Harden-Robles was very specific about her final wishes. Victor sat across from Dustin and Katrina, Russellberry beside him. Graciela Doty was also present, which raised Dustin's eyebrows. Ms. Doty is here as a potential witness to Mrs. Robles's character in her final months, Russellberry explained before anyone could ask. Annette's expression suggested she found this highly irregular, but continued. The estate consists primarily of the family home at 1247 Oak Street, valued at approximately $850,000, a savings account with $120,000, Beverly's personal effects, and a life insurance policy worth $500,000. Victor leaned forward. However, Annette continued, the house was purchased by Beverly's first husband, Thomas Harden, and was held in a trust for their son, Dustin Harden. Beverly had a life estate, meaning she could live there until her death, at which point full ownership reverts to Dustin. That's ridiculous, Victor snapped. I lived in that house. I made improvements. I have rights. The trust is ironclad, Mr. Robles. As for the savings and life insurance, Beverly left very specific instructions. Annette pulled out a handwritten letter. She wrote this 2 weeks before her death. To my son Dustin, who has always made me proud, I leave everything I have the power to give. He is the best man I've ever known, and I'm sorry I didn't protect him more from the man I foolishly married. To Victor, who knows what he did, I leave nothing but my contempt. The room went silent. Victor's face turned purple. She was under duress. Medications. She didn't know what she was writing. She was lucid, Annette said firmly. I witnessed this document myself, along with 2 nurses. It's legally binding. We'll contest this, Russellberry said, already making notes. Undue influence. Her son is military. He could have coerced her. Dustin laughed, a bitter sound. I've been deployed for most of the past 7 years. I barely saw her. Exactly. Victor stood, his chair scraping back. You abandoned her. Left her with me to care for her, and now you want to swoop in and take everything? I gave up years of my life. You gave up nothing, Katrina said quietly, but with steel in her voice. Beverly had home health aides. Friends. A support system. You were barely there. You don't know anything. Victor's mask was slipping. That woman, she promised me. She said when we got married that I'd be taken care of. She lied. Annette's eyebrows rose. Mr. Robles, I'd advise you to consult with your attorney before saying anything else. But Victor was past listening. I'll sue. I'll take this to court. He's not stable anyway. Military trauma, PTSD, who knows what else. He's unfit to manage an estate of this size. Dustin remained eerily calm, the same calm he'd cultivated under enemy fire. Do what you need to do, Victor. As they left the office, Clay was waiting in the parking lot. He'd been doing reconnaissance, his word, and his expression was grim. We need to talk, Clay said. I did some digging on Victor Robles. Your stepfather isn't who he claims to be. Chapter 3. Buried Secrets. They met at Dustin and Katrina's modest home near the base, a 3-bedroom ranch they'd bought 2 years ago. Clay spread documents across the dining room table like a mission briefing. Victor Robles, Clay began, formerly Victor Mendez. Changed his name 12 years ago after his second wife died under mysterious circumstances. No charges were filed, but the insurance company paid out $300,000. Second wife. Dustin leaned forward. Mom was his third that we know of. First wife divorced him, took everything in the settlement. Second wife, Elena, died in a car accident. Single vehicle, drove off a cliff. The investigation was closed quickly. Too quickly. I have a friend in the police department who pulled the file. There were inconsistencies, but the lead detective was convinced to drop it. Katrina pulled up her laptop. I'll search for Elena Mendez. But wait, there's more. Clay continued. Victor's consulting firm? It's a shell. No real clients. No actual work. His income comes from somewhere else. I found property records. He owns 3 rental properties under various LLCs, all purchased with cash within 6 months of marrying his previous wives. He's a predator, Dustin said, the pieces falling into place. He finds women with money, marries them, takes what he can. And your mom figured it out, Katrina said, looking up from her screen. That's what she was trying to tell you in the hospital. The papers in the attic. She was documenting something. Dustin stood abruptly. We need to get into that house before Victor does. He has a legal right to be there as the surviving spouse, Clay cautioned. You go in, take things, that's theft. Could hurt your case. Not if I'm retrieving my personal property, Dustin countered. I grew up in that house. I have things in the attic. Old military gear, my father's belongings. He can't stop me from getting my own stuff. They drove to the house at dusk. The white 2-story colonial looked different now, empty of his mother's warmth. Victor's Mercedes wasn't in the driveway. 15 minutes, Clay said, keeping watch. In and out. Dustin used his key. Mom had never asked for it back. The house smelled stale. Mail was piled on the hall table, and dirty dishes sat in the sink. Victor had already stopped caring now that Beverly was gone. The attic was accessed through a pull-down ladder in the hallway. Dustin climbed up, flashlight in hand. The space was cramped, filled with boxes and old furniture. He found his father's footlocker, his own boxes from high school and early Navy days. And then, tucked behind the Christmas decorations, a blue plastic box. Inside were files, bank statements, private investigator reports. Beverly had hired someone to look into Victor 6 months ago. The PI's findings were damning. Victor's real name, his previous marriages, a pattern of financial manipulation. There were also photos, Victor with Graciela Doty, dated 3 months before Beverly's death. They weren't just business associates. At the bottom of the box was a USB drive and a note in Beverly's handwriting. Dustin, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry. I was a fool. I thought I could handle Victor, thought I could divorce him quietly and avoid a scene. But he found out. He threatened me. Said he'd ruin you, destroy your career with lies. I couldn't let that happen. This drive has everything, recordings, financial records, proof of what he is. Use it. Stop him. I love you. Mom. Dustin's hands trembled. His mother had been threatened, terrorized, and she'd protected him anyway. Dustin. Clay's voice floated up. Car in the driveway. We need to go. Now. Dustin grabbed the blue box, his father's medals, and climbed down. They were halfway to the front door when it opened. Victor stood there, Graciela beside him. Behind them, a police officer. That's him. Victor pointed at Dustin. Breaking and entering. Theft. Officer, arrest him. The cop, a young man who looked barely out of the academy, stepped forward uncertainly. Sir, I need you to put down the box and step outside. This is my house, Dustin said calmly. My mother left it to me. I'm retrieving my personal property. The estate is in probate. Russell Berry appeared behind Victor. Of course he was here. This was planned. Until the court rules, you have no right to remove anything. Those are my father's military medals and my childhood belongings. You have no right to keep them. The young officer looked between them, clearly out of his depth. Maybe we should all just calm down and... He's stealing. Victor's face was red. He's unstable. Military trauma. He probably has weapons in that box. He's dangerous. Dustin carefully set the box down and raised his hands. Years of military discipline kept his voice steady. Officer, I'm Lieutenant Commander Dustin Hardin, U.S. Navy. I'm unarmed. In that box are personal papers, my father's medals, and family documents. You're welcome to inspect them. The officer looked relieved at the reasonable response. He examined the contents. Nothing illegal, just papers and medals. This seems like a civil matter, sir, he said to Victor. I can't arrest him for taking his own belongings. Then we'll do this the legal way, Victor snarled. You want to fight, Dustin? You'll get one. By the time I'm done, everyone will know what you really are, a broken soldier playing hero. As they left, Dustin heard Graciela whisper to Victor. Are you sure about this? He's not what you expected. He's weak, Victor replied, loud enough for Dustin to hear. They're all weak. The uniform doesn't make him a man. In the car, Clay gripped the steering wheel. That son of a bitch. Dustin, I've seen you under fire. I've seen you make decisions that saved lives while explosions were going off around us. You're the strongest person I know. Don't let him get in your head. He's not, Dustin said quietly, the blue box in his lap. He's just sealed his fate. Chapter 4, Legal Warfare. 2 weeks later, Russell Berry filed a lawsuit contesting Beverly's will and seeking half the estate plus $200,000 in compensation for emotional distress and loss of consortium. The claim described Dustin as mentally unstable, potentially suffering from PTSD, and likely to have influenced his mother through intimidation. Annette Garcia sat across from Dustin and Katrina in her office, the lawsuit spread before them. This is garbage, she said bluntly. But garbage we have to deal with. They're trying to delay probate, tie up the assets, make you settle just to end it. What are our options? Katrina asked. We fight. But I need to know, Dustin, have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD? Any mental health issues on record? I did 6 months of counseling after my 3rd deployment, Dustin admitted. Standard stuff. Processing what I'd seen. The Navy mandated it. That's actually good, Annette said. Shows you took care of your mental health. We can get your therapist to testify that you successfully completed treatment and were fit for duty. In fact, your service record would be helpful. I'll need copies. Dustin had brought his file. Annette read through it, her eyes widening. Lieutenant Commander. Navy Cross. Silver Star. 3 Bronze Stars. You saved 47 lives during a maritime rescue operation under enemy fire. She looked up at him. Why didn't you mention this? It's not relevant. It's absolutely relevant. Victor is claiming you're unstable and unfit. Your record shows exemplary service and extraordinary heroism. This demolishes his case. There's more, Dustin said, pulling out the USB drive. My mother documented Victor's past, his previous marriages, his pattern of targeting wealthy women, and she recorded conversations. They listened to the audio files on Annette's computer. Beverly's voice, weak but clear. Victor, I know about Elena. I know what you did. You know nothing, you stupid woman. Elena was an accident. The PI found the brake line was cut. You sabotaged her car. Prove it. You can't. And if you try to leave me, I'll destroy your precious son. I'll ruin his military career. I have connections. I'll make sure everyone knows what a violent, unstable psycho he is. Dustin is a hero. Dustin is a killer in a uniform. I'll make sure that's all anyone sees. The recording ended. Annette sat back, her face pale. We need to go to the police. With what? Dustin asked. A recording that doesn't actually admit to murder? He threatened me, threatened my career, but he's careful. He never says anything actionable. Then what do you want to do? Dustin's eyes were hard. I want to give him exactly what he's asking for. A legal fight. Let's make this public. Let's put Victor Robles on trial. Over the next week, they prepared. Annette filed a countersuit claiming harassment and demanding sanctions. She also contacted the local news, a reporter named Lee Michael who specialized in investigative journalism. Lee was a bulldog. Within days, she'd uncovered Victor's name change, his previous wives, the suspicious death of Elena Mendez. Her story ran with the headline, Gold Digger or Killer. Local man's history of dead wives revealed. Victor's response was to escalate. He filed for an emergency hearing claiming Dustin had violated a restraining order no one knew existed until Berry filed it ex parte. He got a judge to sign an order without you present, Annette explained. Claims you threatened him. It's temporary, but if he makes it permanent, you can't go near him or the house. I never threatened him. Doesn't matter. It's your word against his. The hearing was set for 10 days out. Judge Isaac Stewart presiding. Chapter 5. Investigations. Clay Erickson was a man of many talents. An investigation was one of them. After leaving active duty, he'd worked private security, had contacts throughout the military and law enforcement community. When Dustin asked for help, Clay assembled a team. We need to understand Victor's financials, Clay said at their strategy meeting. Also present were Tony Goodrich, a forensic accountant who'd served with them in the Navy, and Lynette Bishop, a private investigator who specialized in insurance fraud. His consulting business is a front, Tony said, spreading financial records across the table. But the money's real. He's pulling in about $200,000 a year from consulting fees paid by various LLCs. I traced them, shell companies, all of them. But the money originates from offshore accounts. Money laundering? Katrina asked. Possibly. Or he's hiding assets from ex-wives, the IRS, or both. Lynette pulled up photos on her laptop. I've been following Victor and Graciela Doty. They're not just friends. She's been living in a condo Victor owns, in Graciela's name, but he pays the mortgage. They've been together at least a year, maybe longer. So he was cheating on Mom, Dustin said quietly. More than that. Look at the pattern. Lynette laid out a timeline. Victor meets wealthy woman, courts her quickly, marries within 6 months. Within a year, starts affair with next target. Previous wife either dies or divorces. He moves on, takes whatever assets he can. Elena Mendez died 8 months after he started seeing Beverly, Clay noted. Beverly dies, and now he's with Graciela, trying to get Beverly's estate. We need to prove Elena's death wasn't an accident, Dustin said. If we can show a pattern, we can't reopen a 12-year-old case without new evidence, Annette cautioned. But we can use the pattern to show his character, his motives. What about Graciela? Katrina asked. Could she testify against him? Why would she? Lynette countered. She's complicit. She's probably hoping to be wife number 4. Tony cleared his throat. Actually, I found something interesting. Graciela Doty filed for bankruptcy 3 years ago. Lost her business, her house, everything. Suddenly, she's driving a new BMW and wearing designer clothes. Where's the money coming from? Victor, Clay said. He's funding her lifestyle. Which means she's dependent on him, Dustin observed. And if Victor goes down, she loses everything again. So we offer her a deal, Annette said. Immunity in exchange for testimony. She won't take it, Dustin said. Not yet. She thinks Victor's going to win. We need to shake her confidence first. The emergency restraining order hearing arrived. Judge Stewart was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who'd seen every trick in the book. Victor took the stand first, Russell Berry leading him through his testimony. Mr. Robles, can you describe the incident that led you to seek this order? Dustin broke into my home, Victor said, playing the victim perfectly. He threatened me. Said he'd make me pay for disrespecting his mother. He was aggressive, violent. I feared for my safety. He broke into your home? The house I shared with my late wife. Yes. And what did he take? Personal documents. Family papers. Things he had no right to. On cross-examination, Annette went for the throat. Mr. Robles, you testified this was your home. But the house was owned by Beverly Hardin's trust, correct? We live there together. But you have no ownership interest, do you? My wife. Your late wife, who explicitly disinherited you in her will. The house belongs to Dustin Hardin. So when he entered the property with his own key to retrieve his personal belongings, he wasn't breaking in, was he? Victor's jaw tightened. He had no right. The police officer at the scene determined it was a civil matter and declined to arrest Mr. Hardin. Isn't that correct? The officer was inexperienced. So everyone's wrong except you? Annette let that hang. Mr. Robles, you testified my client threatened you. What exactly did he say? He said I'd pay. Those exact words. You'll pay? Victor hesitated. Words to that effect. Can you be more specific? It was the way he looked at me. Military men, they're trained killers. I know violence when I see it. Objection, Annette said calmly. Speculation and prejudice. Sustained, Judge Stewart said. Mr. Robles, stick to what was actually said or done. He intimidated me with his presence. His presence. He intimidated you by existing in proximity to you. He's dangerous. Based on what? The fact that he served his country? That he saved 47 lives under enemy fire and received the Navy Cross for valor? Russell Berry jumped up. Objection. Relevance. Goes to character, Your Honor, Annette said. Mr. Robles is painting my client as violent and unstable. His actual record shows the opposite. Judge Stewart looked at Victor over her glasses. I'm going to allow it. Continue, Ms. Garcia. Mr. Robles, were you aware that Lieutenant Commander Hardin has never been disciplined for violent behavior? That his military record is exemplary? That he's been evaluated multiple times and found psychologically fit for duty? I know what I saw. What you saw was a man retrieving his belongings from his own house. Let me ask you something else. Were you having an affair with Graciela Doty while married to Beverly Hardin? Objection. Berry was on his feet. Relevance. Goes to credibility, Your Honor. Mr. Robles is claiming emotional distress over his wife's death while simultaneously maintaining a relationship with another woman. I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Robles. Victor's face flushed. Graciela is a friend and business associate who lives in a condo you pay for, who was present when you had my client nearly arrested, who seems very invested in the outcome of this estate dispute. The hearing went downhill for Victor from there. Judge Stewart denied the restraining order. Mr. Robles, I find your testimony unconvincing, she said. This appears to be a transparent attempt to harass the rightful heir to the estate. The temporary order is dissolved. Furthermore, I'm ordering you to vacate the premises at 1247 Oak Street within 30 days. This court is adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Victor grabbed Dustin's arm. You think you've won? This isn't over. Dustin looked down at Victor's hand on his uniform sleeve, then back up at Victor's face. His voice was quiet, controlled. Take your hand off me. Something in his tone made Victor step back. Clay moved closer, a wall of muscle and loyalty. Walk away, Victor, Clay advised. Before you do something you'll regret. As Victor stalked off with Berry and Graciela, Katrina squeezed Dustin's hand. That went well. Too well, Dustin said, watching Victor's retreating back. He's going to do something stupid. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. Victor did something stupid 3 days later. He filed an amended lawsuit claiming not just half the estate, but the entire thing, alleging that Dustin had orchestrated Beverly's death through neglect and emotional abuse, and was thus ineligible to inherit under California's Slayer statute. He's insane, Katrina said, reading the filing. He thinks you killed your own mother? He's desperate, Annette corrected. And desperate men make mistakes. This is actually good for us. How is accusing my husband of matricide good? Because now he has to prove it. And he can't. Meanwhile, we can use discovery to dig into his finances, his past, everything. He just opened the door. The discovery process was brutal. Victor's attorneys requested Dustin's complete military records, medical records, financial documents, everything. Annette requested the same from Victor. And that's when things got interesting. He's refusing to comply, Annette reported 2 weeks later. Claims his financial records are protected business information. The judge gave him 1 week to produce documents or face sanctions. He's hiding something, Tony Goodrich said. And I think I know what. Look at this. He pulled up a spreadsheet. Victor filed for bankruptcy in 2015, claimed he was broke. But 6 months later, he bought a rental property for $400,000 cash. Where did that money come from? Elena's life insurance, Dustin said. Paid out in 2014. But if he received $300,000 from her death, he should have disclosed it in the bankruptcy filing. He didn't. That's bankruptcy fraud. Clay smiled grimly. And if we can prove he committed fraud in the bankruptcy, we can reopen that case, which means all his assets could be seized. Not just that, Lynette Bishop added. I found something else. Graciela Doty's bankruptcy? She listed Victor Robles as a creditor. Said she owed him $50,000 for a business loan. He testified in her bankruptcy hearing that she'd never paid him back. But I have bank records showing he deposited exactly $50,000 into her account 3 months before she filed. He funneled money to her to hide it from his creditors, Annette said, then had her claim it as a debt to him in her bankruptcy. Bankruptcy fraud ×2, Tony grinned. That's a federal crime. They brought this information to the U.S. Attorney's Office. A prosecutor named Evan Nolan, young but aggressive, agreed to open an investigation. If this pans out, Evans said, we're looking at fraud charges, possible money laundering, maybe more. The problem is, we need someone to flip. These cases are hard to prove without inside testimony. Graciela, Dustin said. She's the weak link. Evan nodded. We could offer her immunity in exchange for cooperation. But approaching her is tricky. If she tells Victor, they'll destroy evidence. Let me talk to her, Lynette offered. Woman to woman. I can be persuasive. 3 days later, Lynette arranged to accidentally run into Graciela at a coffee shop. What she learned was fascinating. She's terrified of him, Lynette reported. Victor's been getting more unstable. Drinking heavily. Angry outbursts. She said he smashed his phone last night after getting news about the discovery deadline. Is she willing to talk? Annette asked. She wants guarantees. Immunity, witness protection, financial support. She knows if she betrays Victor, he'll come after her. We can offer the first two, Evan Nolan said. But she has to give us something substantial first. Evidence, testimony, something we can use. Lynette arranged a meeting. Graciela Doty arrived at Annette's office looking haunted, dark circles under her eyes, trembling hands. He's going to kill me, she said without preamble. If he finds out I'm here, he'll kill me like he killed Elena. The room went silent. You have proof he killed Elena Mendez? Evan leaned forward. He told me. He was drunk, angry that Beverly had changed her will. He said, I dealt with Elena when she tried to cut me out. I can deal with Beverly's brat too. Did he say how he dealt with Elena? He cut her brake lines. Made it look like an accident. He bragged about how smart he was, how the stupid cops never figured it out. Would you testify to that? Graciela nodded, tears streaming down her face. I didn't know what I was getting into. I thought he was just a businessman. But he's evil. He's planning something. He keeps talking about how Dustin needs to be dealt with before the trial. Dustin felt ice in his veins. Dealt with how? I don't know exactly. But he's been asking about your routine, where you work, when you're alone. He hired someone, a man named Darren Pratt. I don't know what for, but Victor paid him $10,000 cash. Clay immediately pulled up his phone, searching databases. Darren Pratt, arrested twice for assault, works as a freelance security consultant. He looked at Dustin. He's muscle, an enforcer. Victor's planning to hurt you, Katrina said, gripping Dustin's hand. We need to go to the police. And say what? Evan countered. That he hired someone for an unspecified purpose? We need more. Then we set a trap, Dustin said, his voice cold and calm, the voice of a military commander. We give Victor what he wants. An opportunity to deal with me. Chapter 7. The Ambush. The plan was simple. Make Dustin look vulnerable while actually controlling every variable. Clay arranged for cameras, backup, and a clear path to catch Victor and Darren Pratt in the act. You're bait, Clay said bluntly. I don't like it. I've been bait before, Dustin replied. Mogadishu, remember? Drew out the hostage takers while you flanked them. That was different. We had a whole SEAL team. We have Annette's investigator team, off-duty cops we trust, and the FBI on speed dial. It'll work. They leaked information through Graciela, carefully controlled details about Dustin's schedule. A late-night visit to the Oak Street house to collect more of his mother's belongings. Alone. No Clay, no Katrina. Just Dustin, vulnerable. The night of the operation, Dustin arrived at the house at 10 p.m. The street was dark, quiet. Inside, cameras were hidden in every room, audio recording devices everywhere. Clay and 3 former military contractors were stationed in the house next door, watching. 2 off-duty police officers waited in an unmarked car down the street. Dustin went through the motions, opening boxes, sorting through his mother's things. The grief was real. Beverly's handwriting on labels, her clothes still in the closet, the smell of her perfume faint but present. At 10:47 p.m., a car pulled up. Victor's Mercedes. But Victor stayed in the car. Darren Pratt got out, a muscular man with a shaved head and prison tattoos creeping up his neck. Dustin watched through a window as Pratt approached the house. He was carrying something, a tire iron. Subjects approaching. Clay's voice came through Dustin's hidden earpiece. Pratt is armed. Victor's still in the vehicle. You have backup in 30 seconds if needed. Pratt didn't knock. He tried the back door, found it unlocked. Dustin had left it that way on purpose. The man entered the kitchen, moving with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. Dustin stood in the living room, waiting. When Pratt came around the corner, tire iron raised, Dustin didn't flinch. You must be Darren, Dustin said conversationally. Victor send you? Pratt sneered. Smart guy, huh? Won't be so smart when I'm done with you. I'll give you one chance to walk away. Or what? You gonna fight me, soldier boy? Pratt swung the tire iron. Dustin moved. 12 years of military combat training, countless hours of hand-to-hand combat drills, muscle memory honed in real combat situations. He sidestepped the swing, grabbed Pratt's wrist, and used the man's momentum to send him crashing into the wall. The tire iron clattered to the floor. Pratt was tough. Dustin had to give him that. He came up swinging, landed a punch to Dustin's ribs. But Dustin had taken worse. He swept Pratt's legs, put him on the ground, and had him in an arm lock before the man could react. Clay, we're good. Dustin said into his mic, call it in. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Pratt struggled, but Dustin's hold was iron. Outside, Victor realized what was happening. He threw the Mercedes in reverse, but the unmarked police car was already blocking him in. Officers approached with guns drawn. Victor Robles, step out of the vehicle. In the house, more officers flooded in. They found Dustin calmly restraining Pratt, who was cursing and threatening lawsuits. Breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon. The lead officer said, cuffing Pratt, you have the right to remain silent. Outside, they arrested Victor on conspiracy to commit assault, possibly attempted murder, depending on what Pratt was willing to say to reduce his sentence. This is a setup. Victor screamed as they cuffed him. He attacked my associate. This is entrapment. Your associate broke into the house with a weapon, the officer replied. And we have you on camera sitting in the car, watching. You're an accomplice. Katrina arrived as they were loading Victor into a police car. She ran to Dustin, checking him over for injuries. I'm fine, he assured her. Pratt got one punch in, that's all. You're insane. What if he'd had a gun? He didn't. Victor's too smart for that. A gun means premeditated murder. A tire iron can be explained as intending intimidation that got out of hand. But it's enough. Clay clapped him on the shoulder. Good work, Commander. Just like Mogadishu. Except in Mogadishu, nobody questioned whether I was the good guy. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. Victor made bail after 2 days, but the damage was done. The arrest made headlines. Lee Michaels' follow-up story detailed everything. The pattern of dead wives, the financial fraud, the attempted assault. More importantly, Darren Pratt decided to talk. Facing serious prison time, he gave prosecutors everything. Victor had hired him to rough up Dustin, maybe break some bones, make it look like a random attack. Victor had paid $10,000 up front with another $15,000 promised after the job was done. With Pratt's testimony, Graciella's cooperation, and the financial evidence, federal prosecutors charged Victor with bankruptcy fraud, conspiracy to commit assault, and witness intimidation. They also reopened the investigation into Elena Mendez's death. Her body was cremated, Evan Nolan explained, so we can't get new physical evidence. But with Graciella's testimony about Victor's confession, we can present it to a grand jury. If they indict, we can charge him with murder. The estate lawsuit hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. The night before, Dustin sat in his home office, reviewing his mother's recordings one more time. Beverly's voice, weak but determined. I should have left him sooner. I was afraid. Afraid of what he'd do to Dustin. But I see now that my son doesn't need my protection. He's stronger than I ever gave him credit for. He's his father's son, brave, honorable, good. Whatever happens to me, I know Dustin will be okay. He always finds a way to do the right thing. Katrina found him there, tears on his face. She didn't say anything, just held him while he grieved. Not just for his mother's death, but for the years she'd suffered in silence, trying to protect him from a monster. Chapter 9. Final Judgment. The courtroom was packed. Judge Isaac Stewart presiding. On one side, Victor Robles in an orange jumpsuit, his bail revoked after he'd attempted to flee to Mexico. Russell Berry sat beside him, looking like a man who'd taken a case he deeply regretted. On the other side, Dustin in his dress blues, Katrina beside him, Clay and the rest of his team behind them. Annette Garcia had a thick file of evidence and a list of witnesses. The hearing began with Russell Berry's motion to dismiss based on persecution of the defendant. Judge Stewart was unimpressed. Your client is facing federal charges, Mr. Berry. That's not this court's concern. We're here to determine the validity of the estate claim. Berry called Victor to the stand. It was a disaster. Victor tried to play the grieving widower, but Annette destroyed him on cross-examination. Mr. Robles, you testified that you loved Beverly Hardin. Is that correct? Yes. Yet you were having an affair with Graciela Doty while Beverly was dying of cancer? Graciela provided emotional support during a difficult time. Emotional support that included intimacy, financial support, and a promise that you'd marry her after Beverly died. Victor's jaw clenched. I was grieving. Before your wife was even dead? Convenient. Annette pulled out documents. Mr. Robles, did you or did you not attempt to have Beverly change her will 3 weeks before her death? I suggested she might want to provide for me. I'd given up years. You pressured a dying woman to disinherit her son so you could inherit money that wasn't yours. When she refused, you threatened her, didn't you? I never. We have recordings, Mr. Robles. Beverly recorded your threats. Would you like me to play them for the court? Russell Berry jumped up. Objection. Those recordings are illegally obtained. California is a one-party consent state, Annette countered. Beverly had every right to record conversations in her own home. They're admissible. Judge Stewart nodded. Play the recordings. The courtroom listened in silence as Victor's voice filled the space, threatening Beverly, threatening Dustin, revealing his true nature. By the end, several spectators were in tears. Your Honor, Annette said, I'd like to call Lieutenant Commander Dustin Hardin to the stand. Dustin stood, straight-backed in his uniform, and took the oath. Commander Hardin, Annette began formally. Can you describe your military service for the court? I enlisted in the Navy at 18. Served 12 years, including 3 combat deployments. I'm currently assigned to training operations at the naval base. Have you received any commendations? Yes, ma'am. The Navy Cross, Silver Star, 3 Bronze Stars, Purple Heart, and various unit commendations. Judge Stewart looked up sharply. The Navy Cross? That's the second highest military decoration for valor, isn't it? Yes, Your Honor. What did you do to earn it? Dustin hesitated. He never liked talking about that night. But Annette had prepped him. This was important. During my second deployment, our vessel was conducting anti-piracy operations off the Horn of Africa. We received a distress call from a civilian cargo ship under attack. When we arrived, the situation had deteriorated. The pirates had boarded, taken hostages, and set fires. The ship was sinking. He paused, the memories vivid. I led a boarding team. We engaged the pirates, secured the vessel, and evacuated 47 crew members, men, women, and children. The ship went down 90 seconds after the last person was off. 3 of my team members were wounded in the operation. The courtroom was silent, and Mr. Victor Robles called this playing dress-up. Judge Stewart's voice was ice. Among other things, Your Honor, he frequently mocked my service, called the military a refuge for weaklings and boys who can't make it in the real world. At a family dinner 6 months before my mother died, he told me the uniform didn't make me a man. What was your response? I sat silent, Your Honor. My mother asked me to keep the peace. She loved him, despite everything, and I respected her wishes. Judge Stewart looked at Victor with open contempt, then at the case file in front of her. I've reviewed all the evidence in this matter. The testimony, the recordings, the financial documents. I've also reviewed the criminal charges pending against Mr. Robles. She removed her glasses. Mr. Robles, you came into this court claiming emotional distress and painting Lieutenant Commander Hardin as unstable and unfit to manage his inheritance. You described him as dangerous, violent, and psychologically damaged. Victor started to speak, but she held up her hand. What I see in front of me is a decorated war hero who saved 47 lives under enemy fire. A man who completed psychological counseling and was certified fit for duty by Navy psychiatrists. A man who maintained his composure even while being provoked and threatened by you. A man who, despite having every reason to respond violently to your insults, chose dignity and silence out of respect for his dying mother. She turned to Dustin. Commander Hardin, thank you for your service. Then back to Victor. As for you, Mr. Robles, you are a fraud, a predator, and quite possibly a murderer. Your claim to this estate is not just unfounded, it's obscene. She picked up her gavel. The estate claim is denied in its entirety. All assets pass to Dustin Hardin as specified in Beverly Hardin's will. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of elder abuse. Based on the recordings played in this courtroom, There is probable cause to believe you financially and emotionally abused Beverly Hardin during her final months. Bang! The gavel came down. Additionally, Mr. Robles, I'm ordering you to pay Lieutenant Commander Hardin's legal fees in the amount of $47,000. This case was frivolous, malicious, and brought in bad faith. Russell Berry started to object, but Judge Stewart cut him off. I'm not finished. Bailiff, I want the district attorney's investigative unit in my chambers immediately. I have serious concerns about potential criminal activity that requires further investigation. As Victor was led away, still in his orange jumpsuit, he locked eyes with Dustin one last time. There was no defiance left, only the hollow look of a man who'd finally been beaten. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Lee Michael got to Dustin first. Commander Hardin, how does it feel to be vindicated? Dustin looked into the camera. This was never about vindication. It was about justice for my mother. She deserved better than Victor Robles. She deserved to be protected. I'm just sorry I didn't see what he was sooner. What's next for you? Back to work. I have sailors to train, a wife to love, and my mother's house to turn back into a home. And Victor Robles. That's for the justice system to decide. I have faith they'll do what's right. Epilogue, 6 months later. Victor Robles was convicted on 8 counts of bankruptcy fraud, conspiracy to commit assault, and elder abuse. The murder charge for Elena Mendez went to trial separately. Graciella's testimony, combined with new evidence from reopening the investigation, convinced a jury. Victor was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Darren Pratt took a plea deal and got 5 years. Graciela Doty received immunity in exchange for her testimony and entered witness protection. The house on Oak Street became a home again. Dustin and Katrina moved in, filling it with light and laughter. Beverly's book club friends visited often. Clay became a fixture at Sunday dinners. On the anniversary of Beverly's death, Dustin planted a garden in her memory. Roses, her favorite. As he worked the soil, he thought about strength, about what it really meant to be a man. It wasn't about violence or dominance or loud declarations. It was about protecting those you loved, standing firm in the face of cruelty, and knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. Victor had called him weak, but Victor was in prison, broken and alone. Dustin was home, surrounded by love, living a life his mother would be proud of. In the end, silence had been his greatest weapon, patience his strongest shield, and justice, though delayed, had been absolute. He was his father's son, his mother's pride, a warrior who knew that the truest victories were won not with fists, but with character. And that was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.